Stream Team. It's your boy Neal back with another reaction video, guys. And here we are with what did the Germans say about Soviet, British, and American soldiers? Before we find out, if you happen to enjoy the video, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. If you have a favorite video request of your own, you can subscribe to Patreon and request it there, or drop it in the comment section, or in the description section there's a premium as well as free request link. Now, premium and Patreon requests are prioritized.
Hello everyone, my dear friends. You are on the Stories Matter channel. Get comfortable. We're about to start. Happy viewing. German officers and command considered their soldiers to be the best in the world. The most disciplined, skillful, and steadfast in battle. Also, the German military leaders had an unambiguous opinion about the opponents: Soviet, British, and American soldiers. We'll talk about this in the video. Let's start with Soviet soldiers. The Germans had a special relationship with Soviet soldiers. They were extremely negative. There was powerful propaganda against the Soviet Union and the Jewish Bolshevik threat. The beginning of the war left the German officers with a double impression of the enemy. The actions of the Soviet command were mediocre and clumsy. There was an extremely irrational waste of human and material resources, as well as huge losses in infantry and military equipment. There was no logical coordination in the actions of the troops. The reasons were established only later. The Russian soldiers had an acute shortage of radio stations. Many experienced officers also suffered during the repression. But the Germans were shocked by Russian determination. The Russians continued to fight in the most hopeless situations. Surprise and respect for German officers were also caused by the physical and spiritual stamina of Soviet soldiers, their unpretentiousness, ability to survive in incredibly difficult conditions, and also courageously endure hardships and suffering. The Germans also admired the Soviet soldiers' ability to work, their speed, and their skill in which they built complex fortifications and underground tunnels.
Dang.
After Stalingrad, the contempt of German officers for Soviet soldiers was replaced by sincere respect and obvious concern for the outcome of the war.
Oh, wow.
They were surprised and frightened by how unexpectedly the Russians could attack, especially at night. During World War II, no one was as effective in night battles as the Soviet troops. On the contrary, the Soviet artillery didn't particularly frighten the Germans, mainly because the Russian soldiers didn't have enough ammunition.
Oh, wow.
Also, the Russians had a problem with radios, which means they had no coordination of fire, like the Americans and the British. In addition, Russian radio messages were the easiest to intercept.
Oh.
The Germans were interested in the difference in tactics against Allied forces on the Western Front and the USSR. Against Europeans, quickly seized the initiative in an unexpected encounter and forced the enemy to surrender. It worked almost 100% of the time for the Germans. It didn't work only with Soviet soldiers. They fought back, even when the chances of success were minimal. Opinion about British soldiers.
Dang, so it sounds like at first they didn't think highly of the Russian soldiers at all. It sounds like they definitely thought they were very sloppy, they were inefficient, they wasted manpower, they wasted machinery, they took huge casualties. Radio, they couldn't fire accurately because the radios, they weren't getting messages clearly, and then their messages were easily interceptable. But all of that was overcome with respect and fear due to the fact that the Soviet soldiers would never back down. In situations where there was no chance of winning, the Soviet soldiers fought. When it came to fighting of the night, it sounds like the Soviet soldiers were best at it. They were just unrelenting. No matter how much you knocked down, they were going to continue to get back up and keep coming for you. And that, I guess at a certain point, German soldiers really started to respect that and really started to fear that because they became unpredictable. Whereas I feel like most soldiers, right, you put them in a situation where they have no chance of winning. You put them in a situation where they're 100% going to lose. They probably concede or wave the white flag. Whereas these Soviets were like, no, like, I'm fighting to the death. So that's interesting. Let's hear what he got to say about the British.
The Germans gave British soldiers the nickname lions led by donkeys.
Oh, wow.
The Germans regarded the British military as professional, disciplined, well-trained, brave, and tenacious. But the British were uninitiated compared to the Germans. Their tactical understanding was at zero. They didn't know how to
Really?
adapt to circumstances. The direct attacks of the
Really?
British have always surprised the Germans with their simplicity. British tank units lined up and attacked the German anti-tank defenses head-on. No infantry support. The Germans were surprised by such simple tactics, especially from the people who invented the tank. The Germans marked the British artillery as a plus. It deployed 3 to 5 times faster than American artillery.
Dang.
And all the Allies in the West relied on the support of the British artillery.
Makes sense.
The Germans had a very definite and unanimous impression of the Americans.
So, all right, before we get to the American impression. So the British, they saw them as very smart, well-disciplined, lions led by donkeys, but they didn't see them as, they saw them as uninitiated, that they had no tactical skill, they didn't know how to adjust, which is crazy to say because when you look back at the events of the war, and the UK actually being the first ones to give Germany that big defeat and basically save the world, it seems like the UK was definitely more tactical than the Germans were and how they went about things. They were definitely initiated. I feel like the whole country of UK, men, women, children, everybody stood together. Everybody fought together in order to stop Germans and Hitler. And so to say that about the British soldiers is absolutely crazy to me. But let's hear what he got to. We hear with the Americans now. Let's hear what he got to say.
The Germans had a very definite and unanimous impression of the Americans. All those who fought with them on the Western Front speak of the US Army as mediocre soldiers who didn't have sufficient stamina and determination. The Americans achieved victories only thanks to an unlimited amount of resources, military equipment, weapons, and ammunition. On the contrary, in Germany in 1944 to 1945, there was an acute shortage of resources. The Americans fought aggressively, but they were tactically clumsy. Their tactics were primitive. They sent troops forward, besieging the enemy with excessive fire. The soldiers didn't show special zeal and heroism. They did their job and tried to survive the war. The Germans were very fond of making ambushes against the Americans. It was perfect against their aggressive straightforward tactics. They classically eliminated 3 or 4 tanks from an ambush to slow down the column, and then they fired artillery. Thus, the Germans managed to defeat the Americans, even in a noticeable minority.
Oh, wow.
The only American weapon that the Germans highly valued and feared was artillery. It was inferior to the British artillery in efficiency and accuracy, but it had an unlimited amount of resources. The Americans skillfully coordinated fire on targets. As a result, the German officers considered the Soviet soldiers to be patriots, despising death and fighting to the last drop of blood. American soldiers were trained, well-equipped and armed, but they had no desire to take a mortal risk for the sake of their country.
Okay.
The Germans considered the British military to be brave and stubborn, with good military training and strong artillery, but with poor command.
Wow.
That's all, my dear friends. Be sure to write in the comments what you think about this. If you liked this video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to our channel, and watch new videos.
So basically, the Americans, they didn't really respect the American soldiers. They thought they were mediocre, not that great, but they had access to unlimited artillery and unlimited resources. Which, I mean, in a war, I feel like the thing you probably want most is access to unlimited resources. But yeah, he thought the Russian soldiers were definitely brave, were definitely the most patriotic, whereas the British soldiers were definitely tough, smart, great artillery, but they just didn't feel like they were greatly led. I mean, at the end of the day, the Germans lost, so I wonder what they thought about themselves, or the Nazis. I wonder what they thought about themselves. That's all we have for this video. If you guys did enjoy that, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. And I'll see y'all on the next one. It's your boy Neal, out.